بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمد والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we'll be looking at a hadith from the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, which is a quite well known and famous hadith from his book. And especially being that this hadith, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi is mentioned right in the beginning of his book and in various other places throughout the entire book. But we are obviously looking at the chapter of Ramadan, Sawm and fasting and so forth. The hadith has been narrated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. And he talks about the generosity of the Prophet ﷺ, especially in the month of Ramadan. Let's look at the hadith first, and inshallah then we will look at a few points and lessons that we can take from the hadith. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he mentions that كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أجود الناس بالخير وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان حين يلقاه جبريل عليه السلام وكان جبريل عليه السلام يلقاه كل ليلة في رمضان حتى ينسلخ يعرض عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم القرآن فإذا لقيه جبريل عليه السلام كان أجود بالخير من الريح المرسلة. So he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ was very generous. Ajwadun nas. He was the most generous person. But in the month of Ramadan, when the Prophet ﷺ would meet Jibreel alayhi salam on a nightly basis, he says that the generosity of the Prophet ﷺ would peak. It would increase even more. And this meeting between the Prophet ﷺ and Jibreel alayhi salam would happen every single night throughout the entire month of Ramadan, حتى ينسلخ, until the end of the month. And what would go on a nightly basis in this month? He says that يعرض عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم القرآن. That the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم would recite the Quran in qiyam to Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam would follow from behind. Just as we see in our local masajid, everywhere, that when the Quran is being recited, especially when it's the khatam of the Quran, the entire Quran, you'll have the Imam leading, and then you'll also have a backup, someone behind listening to the Imam. So this is how Jibreel alayhi salam would stand behind the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and would listen and follow from behind, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be leading in the front. Now, when Jibreel alayhi salam met the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the month of Ramadan on a nightly basis, he says, فَإِذَا لَقِيَهُ جِبْرِيلُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ كَانَ أَجْوَدَ بِالْخَيْرِ مِنَ الرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ. That the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam's generosity would peak to the extent it would be like a fast moving wind. And you can imagine when wind moves at speed with strength, there's nothing in its path that escapes the wind. So let's look at the hadith from the beginning, a few lessons that we can learn. Number one is, the Prophet ﷺ was already the most generous. There was nobody that could be more generous than the Prophet ﷺ. But even though he was the most generous, when he would meet Jibreel alayhi salam, his generosity would increase, it would peak. What does this goes to show? It goes to show that your company really matters. Your companionship, those that you hang around with, those that you spend time with, your associates, they really matter. Even in the case of the Prophet ﷺ, that even though he was the most generous of all of mankind, but when he would meet Jibreel alayhi salam, his generosity would increase even more. So it goes to show even the Prophet ﷺ was affected with, in terms of khair, with the environment that he was in, yani with Jibreel alayhi salam. So our companionship really matters. It matters. It really plays a role in how we act, what we do, how we behave, depending on who our associates, our friends and so forth are. So we should really choose wisely. Number two is that generosity. Yes, throughout the entire year we might have been generous in various ways, sadaqah, charity, helping with your physical support, financial support, whatever it may be. But here is the month of Ramadan. Just as the Prophet ﷺ increased in his generosity, it is time for us to increase our generosity also in the footsteps, following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. So, being from different backgrounds, different communities, different places, there are various ways we can choose wisely. There are various ways where we can be generous. The key principle to keep in mind here is that we should invest wisely. Because remember, our generosity in terms of zakat, sadaqah, charity and so forth, this is an investment in our akhirah. Now think about it, when we invest in this dunya, when we invest even a single dollar, when we invest in this dunya, in this world, for a greater return, we choose wisely before we invest. And the more we invest, the more we think over it, the more we brainstorm. And we always, as the saying goes, we don't want to put all the eggs in one basket, just in case something goes wrong. So the same goes for when generosity, especially in the month of Ramadan, or whenever it may be, the zakat, sadaqah, charities and so forth, this is an investment for our akhirah. So spread your sadaqah, spread your charities, spread your zakat. Don't invest in one place. Even if you did invest in one place, inshallah it's accepted. But the more you can spread it out, the more people it would reach, the more organizations, the more nations, the more continents even your money can go. You can stretch it much further than just one place, one family and so forth. So invest wisely when it comes to investing, and invest in various ways. Maybe at times it's just a poor family that you want to help. Maybe it's an Islamic school, a madrasa that you want to help. Maybe it's an organization. Maybe it's someone's medical needs. Whatever it may be, choose and try to spread out your charity through all of these places, so that again your eggs are not in the same basket. That's number one. And now that we are in the month of Ramadan, there's something that we can invest in which is quite easy, especially with the current situation around the globe, where many people, especially those nations where they don't have the social securities that we have in Australia and so forth, where they are struggling, everything's at a standstill, they cannot work, they cannot be paid, they cannot put food on the table. Now they need it more than ever. Now they need it more than ever for their daily suhoor, for their daily iftar, for themselves and their families at large. So for this, we should try. Search organizations or people that are helping these people in need, that need to put food on the table for their suhoor and for the iftar at least this. Because this is when they need it the most. Imagine when we are hungry throughout the day, we look forward to our iftar. When we wake up in the morning, we look forward to our suhoor so that we can be fueled for the entire day. Imagine those people that don't have anything to look forward to in the iftar, or they don't have anything to wake up to in their suhoor. Imagine such people. So look for these kind of places, these organizations that are helping such people, and try to spend in that cause. Because number one, you are spending, you're investing in your akhirah. Number two, there's a special hadith in this regard. The Prophet ﷺ mentions, this is a hadith from Ibn Majah, where the Prophet ﷺ mentions that من فطر صائما كان له مثل أجرهم من غير أن ينقص من أجورهم شيئا. That if you are the sabab, basically, if you are the reason, if you give something to someone to break their fast, من فطر صائما, if you are the one that supports or helps or assists someone to break their fast, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you the same amount, the same reward for that person's fast, without decreasing anything from his ajr, from his reward. So let's say, for instance, you as one individual, you pay for the iftar of 10 people. You only kept one fast, but at the end of the day you will get the reward for 11 people fasting. One is your own fast, and 10 the other people who you assisted for in their iftar, in their suhoor and so forth. And on their end, nothing is taken away from their reward. They get their full reward, because this is from the khaza'in, from the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will get their full reward, and you will get the equal amount of reward in your balance, in your accounts. So this is a great investment for our akhirah. Think about this as the days go by, and before it's too late, before the month of Ramadan ends, look from today who you can assist, who you can support, especially when it comes to the iftar and the suhoor. And another lesson that we can learn from here is, look, be grateful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Number one, be grateful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And number two, be grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you an opportunity to spend. Unfortunately, many a times we have this misunderstanding, a wrong mindset, that we think, we are doing, we're doing a favor for someone because we're helping them in their needs, for their foods and their clothing and so forth. No, we're not doing them a favor. By them being a recipient of our money, they are doing us a favor. They are doing us a favor by taking our money. If you think about it, zakat is the filth of our wealth. If there was nobody out there that could take our zakat, where would we take this filth to? Where would we discharge our zakat? When any one of us, just look at it, maybe it's a raw example, but think about it. Us, when we have filth in our body, we want to dispose of that filth. Are we doing our body a favor, or are we doing the place, the area where we are disposing of the filth a favor? We're doing our body a favor. We're doing it for the benefit of our own body by letting the filth exit our body. So the same thing, this zakat that we take out from our wealth, we're not doing the recipients a favor, we're doing our own wealth a favor. We are purifying our wealth by discharging the zakat. So be grateful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and be grateful that Allah has given us the opportunity that we can spend on people. Be great and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that still there are people available that can take our zakat. People are still available that can take our sadaqah, our charity, and so forth. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a day will come where we'll be roaming with our zakat. There will be nobody to take our zakat. What will we do then? So be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we live in a time where we can still spend, and there are people out there still to receive. And inshallah, let's increase our generosity this Ramadan as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did every Ramadan. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.